Well, good morning. The service is a little different than normal because we are trying to bring into your presence a little bit of what we would do in Bible Zone. Obviously, the setting isn't exactly the same, or you'd all be sitting on the floor. I think you're probably going to thank me for that. So we are going to start out by playing a game. And as you came in, it should have been about every other one of you would have gotten a coin. So if you have that, you'll need to pull that out. And then if you're sitting by yourself in a row, can I encourage you to jump in a row with someone else so you have at least like 2 or 3 people sitting together, because it's not going to work otherwise. So, and then Ellie, go sit over there. Join them. We're playing the game. Everybody else, I think it's looking pretty good. Okay, so today we're talking about the story of Esther. Esther before she became the queen, and then Esther after she became the queen, and basically the journey of how she got there and how God chose to use her. But I want to start with a little bit of background, and we are going to play a little game. It's the left-right game. So basically I'm going to read a story to you, and every time I say the word right, you are going to hand that coin to the... Are you with me? Yes, so when I say the word right in the story, when you hear the word right, you're going to hand the coin to the... Okay, and then when I tell the story, do we have some people that don't have coins? No coin in your row. I think Dan is going to help you out. If anybody else, if you don't have a coin in any other row, put your hand up. I'll get this to you. Thank you. And then when we read the story, not every single person has to have one either. It can be just a few people in the row, as long as somebody has something. So then when we're reading through the story and you hear the word left, you're going to hand your coin to the left. Okay, just want to make sure you guys are tracking here. Okay, we almost ready? You have to put your listening ears on. Everybody's good. Okay, ready? There once was a king named Xerxes. He reigned over a large area and was very wealthy. He had the great idea one day to hold a banquet for all of his nobles, officials, and military leaders. Many of them left their posts for days at a time. Whether or not it was the right thing to do, this went on for an entire 6 months. It's a wonder he had anything left in the end. Following this banquet, he held another banquet for all of the people in the kingdom, from least to greatest, and this lasted for 7 days. He gave the people the right to drink as much as they wanted with no limit. On the 7th day, when King Xerxes was quite drunk and good sense had left him, he ordered that Queen Vashti be brought right out so he could show off to others how beautiful she was. The eunuchs went to her quarters right away to fetch her, but she refused to come. Was she right to refuse? I don't imagine she felt it was right to be paraded in front of everyone. Perhaps it left her in quite a quandary. Obviously, the king did not feel that she made the right decision. King Xerxes was so angry that he left the party and consulted with some of his advisors about what to do with the queen. They advised him that she had left him no choice. He must send a decree that would banish Queen Vashti from the king's presence. And now a new queen must be found right away. Good job, you guys. Okay, so now we have heard the chorus. Oh, the game is done, by the way. You don't have to keep listening from right to left. Yeah, the story is concluded. That could be interesting, though, but I wonder how many times. No, so now we know the course of events leading up to Esther's involvement, but I want to pause for a moment and just consider Queen Vashti. I mean, ultimately, the book of Esther, I told Pastor Nathan, I said there are probably 10, at least 10 different sermons that I could think of to preach or messages to bring to you straight from the book of Esther. There are so many lessons, there are so many things to consider as you read through this book. And so I do want to encourage you, we're going to be like doing kind of a fast forward, drop out of for a second, move on through different parts of this book, but go home and read this for yourselves because there is so much in here. But I want you to think about Queen Vashti for a minute. And did she have any idea that one singular decision, which I don't know, I kind of feel like was justifiable in her part, who knows, maybe she wasn't feeling that way well that day. Maybe she was having a bad hair day. You know, she just didn't want to go out and be put in front of all of these people. But did she have any idea that just by saying no that one time that it was going to change the entire course of her life, and it was going to change her role in the kingdom? We don't know what happens to her. We don't know whether she was like banished from the kingdom altogether, or she was just sent away from the palace, or perhaps she was allowed to continue living in the palace and she just wasn't able to have contact with the king anymore. But it does say that she was being replaced as queen. So she lost that title just because of a singular decision that she made. So we could go off in a whole other direction with that, but I wanted you to think about this. What's amazing about it is that Queen Vashti, by making that one decision and then the follow-up foolishness of King Xerxes, that is what opened the door for Esther to come in and take the position that God would use her in to save the Jewish people. So I want you to consider the game of chess. Are any of you chess players?
Yeah.
Oh, I see a few. Good. Okay, so I was in the chess club in 4th grade for like a minute. It wasn't something that I was very good at, so I didn't stick with it. But I did learn, even back then, that the best chess players are not looking at the board as it is. They're not looking at where the pieces are at that moment. They are already thinking like 5 moves ahead. I don't know how, honestly, it blows my mind, but they're already plotting what their moves are going to be going forward. And I'm so glad that God is that master chess player, that he's the one who knows, you know, yes, I make a decision, I don't know how it's all going to shake out, but he does. And how he takes those pieces and moves them around and orchestrates things. He knows the moves 5 ahead, 10 ahead, 1,000 moves ahead in our lives from where we are, and that he's able to orchestrate those things and use them for my good and for his glory. And so in the same situation, you know, we're seeing with Esther how he's moving those pieces around on the board, and he's paving that way for her to come along. So back to the story. King Xerxes now had to find a replacement queen. I don't know, how would you like to be the replacement? Kind of a funny position, but he wasn't sure how to go about it. So he asked his little group of advisors, and they said, hey, this is what you should do. Send some commissioners out into the kingdom and have them bring back to us any of the young girls who are just very, very beautiful. And we'll put them through beauty treatments for a whole year. And then at the end of that year, we can parade them in front of you and you can choose which one you like the best. And that's who we'll put in position as queen. So just reading through that, I just thought it was so funny. It's like the earliest rendition of the show The Bachelor. So I asked Riley, where is Riley? Riley, where are you? Oh, come on up, come on up. So in the interest of making this memorable for you, and it's not going to be as memorable for you as it was for the first service, because I'm not going to tell on my head this time. Sorry, Nathan, I know. I just don't want to mess up the mic. So, Riley is going to, sorry, just want to make sure that, can everybody still hear me? Okay. In the first service, I actually pulled my hair up on top of my head, and I commented on what a sacrifice it is for ministry, because I would never let you see me like that otherwise. Right now, I'm going to leave my hair down, but Riley is going to go ahead and apply a mud mask on my face as we consider the treatments that Esther, before she was queen, had to go through. So you can go ahead and just watch out for this. So I want us to think about Esther for a minute. The fact that she's this young girl, beautiful, and her background is that she was an orphan. Her parents had died, and her older cousin Mordecai had agreed to take her in and basically was raising her as his daughter. So it sounds, as we go further on in the book of Esther, it gives me the impression that Mordecai and Esther are fairly close. They have a close relationship because of how he pursues her, wanting to make sure that she's okay, checking in with her, and all of that. But so you get this young girl who's Jewish. She grew up knowing the Lord, through the Jewish teachings. And I'm sure she had already some idea at that age of maybe what God had planned for her, or at least she thought she did. And I doubt that being queen was part of that. I doubt that's something that ever crossed her mind. She probably was thinking about getting some kind of an education if it was available, maybe the desire to get married and have children. And maybe even was kind of learning a trade. Maybe she was going to be a midwife or something else to where she was kind of learning a skill so that she would be equipped once she left Mordecai's household to be able to run a household of her own. How's it looking, Riley? My face is not absolutely glowing by the end of this day. Blame the body shop. They give me this wonderful sample and for it to be on twice in one day, I'm sure. I should be in good shape. Mostly done? Okay, there are baby wipes right there so you can wash your hand off. And then this will progressively get crusty and my face will get stiff. So thank you, Riley, for helping with that. So this is just to paint that picture, quite literally, of Esther going through these beauty treatments. They said that for 6 months, they used oil of myrrh on their faces and probably their whole bodies. It must be good stuff. It makes me want to go and get some. If they did that for 6 months, why aren't we? And then the remaining 6 months, it was lots of perfumes and cosmetics. And then at the end of that 6 months, all of the ladies were paraded in front of King Xerxes, and he got to choose. And it says in Scripture, in Esther chapter 2, it says, "Now the king was attracted to Esther more than to any of the other women, and she won his favor and approval more than any of the other virgins. So he set a royal crown on her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. And the king gave a great banquet, Esther's banquet, for all his nobles and officials. He proclaimed a holiday throughout the provinces and distributed gifts with royal liberality." So really, she even got a holiday named after her. That part is pretty cool. But as the story moves along, first, one thing that you need to know if you're not familiar with this in the story of Esther is that she does not volunteer what nationality she is. She does not volunteer the information to King Xerxes or any of his officials that she is Jewish. And that kind of comes into play a little bit later. But as the story moves along, Mordecai, so remember Mordecai is the older cousin, he overheard some men. So the guys, this is kind of a funny thing, and I wish I could picture this better. The guys would just sit at the gate. I guess they would just sit at the gate and chit-chat, network, whatever. So Mordecai was sitting at the gate and overheard a couple of guys conspiring to assassinate King Xerxes. Pretty big deal. So he, like I said, he keeps going to kind of stay in contact with Esther. He goes to the gate to where he would meet up with Esther and passes information along to her to say, hey, go warn the king. Get the word to the king that this is what's going on. And so Esther does that. She passes it along. The conspiracy is squelched. The guys, the conspirators were dispatched. You know what that means. And Mordecai was basically given credit for this, which is a good thing, right? So then enters a man named Haman. And Haman was one of King Xerxes' highest officials. And he was a very proud man. Very proud, not in the positive way. So he was very proud and was, I would say, kind of drunk with the authority of his position. And somehow he managed to go to King Xerxes and get King Xerxes to issue a decree that every everybody was supposed to bow down to Haman whenever he came around. Like, that's a little extreme, I think. But Mordecai, who was a Jewish man and who worshipped the one true God, refused to bow down to Haman. And that angered him. That infuriated him. And it happened repeatedly that Haman would try to get Mordecai to bow down, and he refused. So Haman, instead of just like accepting it for what it was, he was angry, and instead of trying to just take out Mordecai himself, he made it his goal to take out all of the Jewish people in the nation. And he does it in a very sneaky way. So he goes to the king, and what I just kind of feel like King Xerxes must have been doing something else at the time. You know how, ladies, how maybe your husband is watching TV and you want to tell him something, and you kind of say, hey, you know, I went to the store today, da 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 da, and you kind of get that, unless you specifically say, John, I'm talking to you, you know. So I kind of have this feeling that King Xerxes was maybe watching something, he was watching a match, or he was playing golf, or he was doing something else, when Haman comes along and he's feeding all this information to him. And so he's saying, you know, listen, there's this group of people, and they're not obeying your laws. And so we need to take care of them, and we need to wipe them out. And I think King Xerxes is probably doing this thing, like, yep, okay, Haman, yeah, sure, go ahead and do what you need to do. Here's my ring, you know, take this. And so this decree is issued that on a particular day, all of the Jews through the entire nation will be executed. So Mordecai, who has his ear, you know, poised to hear whatever is going on, learns of this plan, and he goes into deep mourning about it. So he's tearing his clothes, he's putting ashes on his head, and Esther kind of sees from a distance what's happening and doesn't understand what is distressing him. She sends out new clothes to him, he rejects them. And so ultimately she ends up summoning Hathach, one of the king's eunuchs, and this is specifically what it says in scripture, word for word, one of the king's eunuchs assigned to attend her, and ordered him to find out what was troubling Mordecai and why. So Hathach went out to Mordecai in the open square of the city in front of the king's gate. Mordecai told him everything that had happened to him, including the exact amount of money Haman had promised to pay. Oh, I forgot that part. Haman actually was going to pay into the king's treasury for this to happen. He was willing to pay to have all of these Jews executed. The amount of money Haman had promised to pay to the royal treasury for the destruction of the Jews. He also gave him a copy of the text of the edict for their annihilation, which had been published in Susa, to show to Esther and explain it to her. And he told him to instruct her to go into the king's presence to beg for mercy and plead with him for her people. Hathach went back and reported to Esther what Mordecai had said. Then she instructed him to say to Mordecai, all the king's officials and the people of the royal provinces know that for any man or woman who approaches the king in the inner court without being summoned, the king has but one law, that they be put to death unless the king extends the gold scepter to them and spares their lives. But 30 days have passed since I was called to go to the king. When Esther's words were reported to Mordecai, he sent back this answer. Do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place. But you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this. So do you hear what he says? He basically says, you know what? Yeah, this might be scary. Yes, you run the risk of having your head lopped off by appearing before the king when he has not summoned you. But don't think that if you stay silent, that you're going to live, because you're Jewish too. You're going to die along with everybody else. So you're going to die if you take it to the king and he rejects you, or you're going to die when all of the Jewish people are killed. God will deliver his people, whether you are involved or not. But perhaps you are in this position for such a time as this. So sometimes we are in unique positions, like the one in which Esther finds herself. So I want everybody to stand up. We're going to play another game. So stand up if you're able. And then I'm going to read statements, and if it applies to you, you will sit down. Gotta get the blood flowing. Sit down if you were an only child growing up. If you were an only child, sit down. Sit down if you didn't brush your teeth this morning. Uh-oh, Custer boys. Sit down if you were wearing green shoes. Anybody wearing green shoes?
No.
Sit down if your name begins with the letter M. Oh, Marlene, sorry. Sit down if you ate a cookie in the lobby this morning. Sit down if you were unable to clap and sing at the same time. I saw at least a couple go down on that one. Sit down if you went to a movie theater last night. Anybody go see a movie last night? No? Sit down if you've baked something with zucchini in the past 2 weeks. All right. Sit down if you would choose vanilla ice cream over chocolate. That always takes out a whole bunch. Sit down if you are a stomach sleeper. Sleep on your stomach. Nope. Some. Okay. Sit down if you own a red car. Sit down if you sort your M&Ms by color before you eat them. That would be me. Sit down if you had braces at some point in your life. Oh my goodness, we still have quite a few. Sit down if winter is your favorite season. Oh, I'm proud of you guys for that one. Sit down if you have ever served on jury duty. That's a good few. Okay. Sit down if you have a current passport. If you have a current passport. Sit down if you're wearing stripes. Anybody wearing stripes? Sit down if you have changed a flat tire on your own. Oh, more power to you. Good for you. Sit down if your legs are tired and you want the game to be over soon. Do we only have kids left? This is going to knock out so many of you. Actually, I'm going to save that one for later. Sit down if you have, well, let's see. Yeah, okay, we'll do it. Sit down if your hair is its natural color. And just as in the first service, wait, do we have both Riley and Ryan? Your hair is not your natural color. You have highlights. The joy of having a mom in that industry. Sit down if you have never prepared deviled eggs. Yeah. Okay. Well, you can see that we all start out on a level playing field, right? We all kind of are the same, but then our experiences and the things about us make us unique. And so we narrowed it down, one thing after another, to where we only had 2 girls left. So there are unique qualities that God has given to each one of you, unique ways that He has gifted you, experiences that you have had. And Esther, in this road to becoming queen, had the unique qualifications that God was able to use her in this position. First of all, she was beautiful. That's how she came into the palace in the first place. She did find favor with the eunuchs who were overseeing her treatments. It says that she found favor with multiple different people, in fact. Her nationality, in terms of God being able to use her, she was Jewish. If she were not Jewish, she would never have spoken up. Like, this wouldn't have been an issue for her. Mordecai would not have come to her with this information. So her nationality played a very, very big role in how God was able to use her. And then also her relationship with Mordecai. I mean, he was the one sitting at the gate getting this information and bringing it to her. It's not like she was, the investigative reporter trying to find out what was going on and that she discovered this. She ended up just being a vessel. She was that relay station, of communication to bring this news to King Xerxes of what was going on. And so I want you to think about how God uses us today. He uses us for a lot of different reasons. And sometimes he uses us because of a unique giftedness. Maybe we do look a certain way. Honestly, he can use that. We look a certain way. We talk a certain way. We have a certain education. We've lived in a certain place in the country or in the world. We have had certain experiences. So, many times I hear stories from people, testimonies of saying, I was able to bless so-and-so because I went through this in the past. God used my past experience to help me serve this person in the future, in the present and the future. So God uses those things. But then the other thing that God uses, and sometimes, maybe we feel like we're taking a back seat to it, but God uses us sometimes simply because of who we know, who the people are in our lives and the contacts that we have. Back in the church where I worked, because I was not involved in local outreach ministries, I always had people coming to me saying, hey, so-and-so is looking for a job, have you heard of anything? And then I would hear from somebody else, hey, we've got this job opening. Or we set up something that was like an exchange of goods and services, and it was so awesome that even in one certain day I would get a call or an email from somebody saying, hey, I know this family, they really need a kitchen table and chairs. So just kind of put that on your list. And within 4 hours, I got a call from somebody else saying, hey, we've got this table and chairs that we'd like to donate. Do you know anybody who needs that? And so God was able to use me simply by virtue of my position and who I knew. And then those people were in a position to bless each other because they knew me and were able to communicate through me. So see, God uses us not even necessarily just because of who we are, but of who we know as well, connections that we have. And with Esther, it was Mordecai. She was connected with him, and he was the one giving information to her. So there's something really important that I want you to think about right now. And this is a lesson that I learned a few years ago when not by choice necessarily, but when I was kind of pushed into the position of staying home with my children, which I loved. I did love it. It's something that I had wanted to do. It just wasn't that it happened on my timetable. So I had been working full-time. Emma had been in daycare. Ellie was going into daycare. She was really little. Emma was 3. Ellie was 4 months old. And all of a sudden, I was home. My position had been cut. I was home with them. And I was really struggling trying to figure out, okay, God, what's your will? What's your will in all of this? What's your will for me? Do you hear that? What's your will for me? I was so focused and concentrating so much on, God, what's your will for me? How am I going to continue to serve you? What kind of job are you going to put me in? You hear the me, I. A lot of times when we talk about God's will, we get very, very focused on us in this whole equation. And what I've learned during that time is that God's will for us isn't always about us. And God brought to my mind and pointed out to me, you know what? For me to be staying home with my girls at that time, it wasn't his will for me to be working necessarily, but it very well might be that God's will for Ellie was that she be home with mom instead of being in daycare. You see how that happens? It's suddenly not about me. It's about her. And so the circumstance that I found myself in and the direction that God was taking me didn't have anything to do with me. It very well could have been because Ellie would not have thrived in daycare, or Emma really needed to have those couple of years at home with me before going off to school. So it shifts. It takes a whole shift of perspective. And for Esther, do you think she wanted to be queen? Do you think she wanted to go through 12 months of beauty treatments and be separated from the only family member that she really knew and loved? Do you think that it was her desire to be in the palace and not really have much control over her own life? I'm sure that those things were not very attractive, that they were not things that she necessarily wanted. And yet, she was in this position, and God's will for her was not about her. It was about his people as a whole. I had another job, and this is in the more recent future, and I was there for a long time. It wasn't a fulfilling job. I kind of sat there twiddling my thumbs sometimes thinking, okay, Lord, really? Do I need to stay in this job? What are we doing here? It's not fulfilling. I don't feel like I'm really reaching people. What's going on? And ultimately, looking back, and hindsight is 2020, I feel like God had me in that position, yes, to impact some of my coworkers while I was there, absolutely. But for this specific coworker, she, through me, got connected to somebody else who entered our life in a very random way. Got connected to now do a job that she loves, that is in her area of specialty, what she trained to do, in an area in which she was not able to get a foot in the door. And so, had we not been working together, she never would have made that connection with this other girl, with this other position, now being in a job that she loves, and a job that God would bring great fulfillment to her. So working that job, it wasn't about me. It wasn't about me at all. God's will for me was about somebody else. So his ability to use us, though, hinges upon our willingness to be used. You know, so you had Esther, she's here, and she's saying, really, I have to go before the king, and he hasn't summoned me. What if he lops my head off? You know, I might lose my life over this. And yet Mordecai points out to her, like, God's going to do it with or without you. And so she says, okay, all right, I'll do it. And she invites Mordecai to gather all of the other Jewish people around him to fast and to pray for her as she was going to go in to see the king. The ultimate end of the story, to wrap it up, just so you know what happened if you haven't read the book of Esther, she does go before the king. She goes before him and she pleads the case of her people. She reveals that she herself is a Jew. And she's kind of, she prayed. And you can tell that she prayed because the way that she goes about it, I don't think would occur to any of us normally. It definitely would not occur to me. But she ends up revealing who Haman is and that he's not a good guy. Mordecai ends up coming out in the spotlight and is honored because of what he has done in the past and then also what he does now. And kind of because of all of that, that's how the Jews then are saved. And it's just really remarkable that she got to be a part of that. So that verse where he said, but you have come to your royal position for such a time as this is where I want to ask you guys to really think about your own lives, your own positions, where you are right now. Where has God positioned you right now for such a time as this? And so kids, you're either in school right now or you're about to start school this week. And you're going to be in a certain classroom. And maybe it's not with all your good buddies. You know, maybe you kind of got separated from them throughout the day. But God perhaps has a specific child in that room that desperately needs your friendship. Or needs a teacher that you will bless. Like kids, that you would be a blessing to your teacher. And then teachers, or any of you who work in the school system, you may have a particular student that comes into your class, whether you're happy about it or not. But it could be that that particular student needs your special attention, needs your particular learning style, or has a special circumstance that only you can meet, or that you can most effectively meet. For such a time as this, you are in relationship with these other people. So for the rest of you, in your places of work, maybe the person at the desk next to you needs to hear the gospel in a really direct way. Or maybe they just need a compassionate listening ear. Or maybe they need encouragement. But God has placed you where you are for such a time as this. In your homes, in your neighborhoods, at the place that you frequent when you go grocery shopping, and the people that you see at the checkout, when you go to the library for such a time as this. Be aware of what's going on around you and be aware of how God might want to use your unique characteristics and qualities and giftedness and experience and even connections to be be a blessing to the people around you and to be used by God. And in this place, in this body of believers, every single one of you, there is a specific place that God would put you if you let him, in order to bless those around you and to bless our community. And you know what? God's will for you may not be about you. And just as a personal testimony about that, I am not called specifically to work with children. I am called to full-time ministry, yes. God did that a long time ago in my life. But am I called to specifically work for kids? No. My earrings. Right out. Am I called to work with kids specifically? No. When I found out about this position, I thought, I don't know. But I didn't want to close the door on an opportunity that God might be bringing. I didn't want to refuse what he might be bringing into my life just because I didn't feel like that was the area where I would want to serve. Does that make sense? Have you ever been in that position where somebody asks you to do something, you're like, well, I don't really want to do that. I don't really want to. I don't really see the benefit for me. No, that's not going to make me feel warm and fuzzy and be so excited to go to church every Sunday. No. But that's not necessarily the case. God's will for you is not always about, and you know what? I'm here on Sunday mornings and I'm interacting with these kids. And you know how God fulfills me through that? I get all kinds of hugs. I get all kinds of smiles. I feel that the kids know that I like and love and appreciate them. When I hear a child pray, and when we're asking questions and doing review of the lesson and they're answering and giving the correct answer, that's always a bonus. Yes. So, like I said, God's will for me right now is not about me. It's about how I can serve him. Because if you look around this room right now, one of these children sitting here in this very room right now could very well be a future pastor of Columbia Heights United Methodist Church. And who am I to let God bring that about without me? I want to be involved in that. I don't know about you guys. I want to be involved in that. Whatever it is that God is doing, I want to be involved in that. And I want to use where he has me at such a time as this to impact the people around me for Jesus and to prepare the way for the people that he wants to use in the future. I'm just one of those little chess pieces that he's moving around on the board, and I'm willing to be moved. Are you? Are you willing to be moved around so that somebody else can come to the forefront, so that somebody else can be fulfilled in the role that God has in mind for them? Are you willing, like Queen Vashti, poor girl, got booted out as queen? That totally changed her whole entire life, and I'm sure it wasn't necessarily a good transition, but she did it. And that's what paved the way for Esther to be in that position to save the Jewish nation. Are you getting the feeling for what I'm saying here? Yes. So where has God positioned you for such a time as this? Let's pray. Father, I thank you so much for your presence here. I thank you for each person in this room and the way that you've uniquely gifted them and prepared them for service in areas that maybe they're not even aware of. Maybe they're serving exactly where you want them right now. Maybe they're thinking about something. Maybe they're wrestling with it, struggling with it. But God, I pray that this message of Esther, this example that she set for us, Lord, I pray that that we'll all be able to see where we are at such a time as this, and that we can also understand that your will for us is not always about us. And so help us to submit to you in that, Lord, and to surrender that to you and allow you to do your most holy work. And I thank you that we have the opportunity as your children to be involved in that work, and that you desire to use us as your tools to bring others along, to share your grace and to share your glory and to share your message of salvation with other people. So help us this week as we go about work, play, hanging out in the neighborhood, in all of those different venues, Lord. Help us to see why you have us where we are right now. Help us to accomplish the task that you have before us. And we love you and we praise you.